It will be very beneficial to us. Did-
This meeting of Fairfield County Council, Monday, June 12, 2017, will now come to order. First item is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the agenda as proposed. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Now down to the invocation. Councilmember Pauley.
Let us pray. Dear God, thank you for everyone gathered here today and the opportunity to meet together. We ask you to be with us to help guide our thoughts, ideas, and decisions during our meeting tonight. We ask all of these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Pauley. Item 4, approval of minutes, regular meeting May 22nd, 2017. Do we have a motion?
So move. Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the minutes from our regular meeting May 22nd, 2017. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Public presentations, we have none. First public comment session, Ms. Locklear, please.
We have one speaker tonight, Mr. Randy Bright, speaking on recreation sites.
Randy Bright, District 1, Ridgeway. And I hate speaking to people who have to face my back. In other words, move this podium, please. So all can see and hear. Anytime there's recreation on the agenda, I would be remiss if I didn't remind council that as we explore recreation and our need for it, we need to keep several things in mind. First, I'm sure all of you are aware, as one of the World Health Organizations released today, that the obesity rates in the world is climbing exponential rates. What does that mean? That means diabetes and a whole host of other diseases which are costly in terms of humanity and money. And guess who's one of the leading counties in South Carolina and in the nation in obesity rates and all the nasty things that go with obesity? Yet, I remind you again, which county ranks in the bottom third of recreational opportunity for its citizens? That would be us. We have about half the average of our citizens, percent of average of our citizens, are able to take advantage of recreational facilities. And of course, obesity and all those things that go hand in hand, recreation is an integral part of reducing those rates and keeping our citizens healthy and away from these chronic diseases. I urge you, whatever the recreation portion is on this meeting, we don't need empty buildings. We need buildings that have facilities that people will use. We need instructors. We need events. We need walking trails. And the other good thing about recreation is something else we need. It's economic development. Sent an article to Dan and Billy about 50 small towns in America that are beautiful places to live with high quality of life. And guess what? There's a bunch of universal threads, and I may talk to those later. But one of the universal threads was recreation. All those places offered recreation. And of course, we have great outdoors, great scenery, all that, but we just don't have recreation. Not only for the health of our population, but for the health of our economy. So please include recreation that people can use, want to use, and are encouraged to use throughout the county. Think of the children, think of the adults, think of everybody, the whole population. If we want to have a reputation of something, why not healthy county? Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes segment 1.
All right, we're now down to number 7, public hearing. There are none. And then 8, ordinances, resolutions, and orders. Item A, first reading by title only, ordinance number 680. Ms. Locklear, if you'd please read that for us.
An ordinance to amend the Fairfield County Land Management Ordinance Number 599 to provide for the zoning reclassification from R1, Single Family Residential District, to R2, Inclusive Residential District of 2 acres, owned by King Family Management, care of Cynthia K. Burley, tax map number 1260414004000, portion of. Property is located at 1224 Old Camden Road, Winsboro, South Carolina, 29180.
Thank you, Ms. Locklear. Do we have a motion?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to provide first reading to ordinance number 680. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Now down to B, first reading by title only, ordinance number 681. Ms. Locklear.
An ordinance to amend the Fairfield County Land Management Ordinance Number 599 to provide for the zoning reclassification from RD1, Rural Residential District, to RC, Rural Community District, of 2 acres owned by Frank Kelly, tax map number 1920000028000. Property is located at 758 Jenkinsville Road, Jenkinsville, South Carolina, 29065.
Thank you, Ms. Locklear. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved and properly seconded to provide first reading to ordinance number 681. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. We're now down to board and commission minutes. Item A is behavioral health services, and B is the hospital board. Unless anybody has an objection, we'll take these in order or together. Do we have a motion?
So move, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the minutes for the behavioral health services and hospital board as presented. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. We're now down to item 10, board and commission appointments. Item A, Aeronautics Commission, Daniel Heath from District 3. Do we have a motion?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to appoint Mr. Daniel Heath to the District 3 appointment for Aeronautics Commission. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Old business, there is none. And then we're on to new business. Item A, use of the mega site for recreation, public services, and development committee recommended approval of this item. Do we have a motion?
Second.
All right, it has been moved and properly seconded to approve the use of the mega site for recreation. Again, this was recommended for council approval by Public Services and Development Committee. Any discussion? All right, I have a question on this. Just like to ask exactly what the use, recreation use would be. I know there was some discussion about, hunting, things of that nature, how that would be handled. I'd like to get some more information on that before we approve it, because as of right now, all we have a motion to do is use the mega site for recreation, and that's not very specific.
Mr. Chair, we're going to ask our administrator to check into the legal aspects of that and be sure we'd be covered, liability, et cetera.
Yes, initially this came up to work with DNR, Department of Natural Resources, to put it in their program, and they have a full program that lays out what has to be done on the site as far as insurance and liability and those type of things, and rules and regulations. It was chose not to go with the DNR program to put this out to bid, essentially. But we will still follow those DNR program rules and regulations. I think that, right, for the leasing, but I think that would make sense.
Okay. Any other discussion? That satisfy everyone?
I was talking about
Okay.
that, so that clarifies.
All right. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right. Now down to item B, request for road name changed from unnamed road off Old Airport Road to Bunny Lane. Public Services and Development Committee recommended approval of this item. We have a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the request of the road name change. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Item C, request for road name change from Enor Drive to Pro Pallet Drive. Public Services and Development Committee recommended approval of this item. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the request for road name change from Enor Drive to Pro Pallet Drive. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? Those opposed? Thank you. Now down to item D, request for road name change from unnamed road to Boykin Road. Public Services and Development Committee recommends approval of this item. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the request for road name change to Boykin Road. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? Those opposed? Thank you. We're now down to the County Administrator's Report. Mr. Taylor.
Just two items to report to council tonight. I want to update council on the Jenkinsville and Mitford recreation sites. The contractors have finished those, and they have turned them over to us, and we'll have Ms. Locklear contacting council to see when an appropriate time is for us to do a dedication, and we'll be doing a dedication on both of those sites shortly, opening them up for hopefully programs and public use. One other item on recreation, Dutchman Creek, the bridge, we don't have that listed on the agenda tonight, but I wanted to update council. We will be closing that temporarily, hopefully for a very short period, because the plates that run across the top of the bridge, the decking, they've gotten in bad condition, and some have come loose. Some are moving more than they should, so we do think it's unsafe. We've had an engineer, Mr. Bill Coleman, look at it today, and hopefully we'll have a recommendation on how to fix that and open that fishing bridge up very shortly.
All right.
We do have video of council. I'd like to see it, just to show. You've seen the video? Okay, good.
Everybody's already seen it?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on. We're now down to the clerk to council's report. There is none, and second public comment session. Ms. Locklear.
We have 5 speakers tonight. First, Ms. Shirley Green speaking on bridge and invitation.
Good evening, Council. Shirley Green, District 2. I'd like to really thank Mr. Taylor, Mr. Anderson, and Mr. Bill Coleman for including me today in your inspection of the Dutchman's Creek Fishing Bridge. The fishing bridge, of course, was closed last week, as was just mentioned. After a barrage of phone calls to me, I contacted Mr. Taylor, and he was so kind, and everyone else was so kind to take me out with them to see the inspection. And I'm just hoping that, as you said before, we can have this fixed quickly. I'd also like to, again, express my open invitation to council for the June 19th meeting of the Fairfield United at St. John's AME Church, 2740 Old Camden Road in Winnsboro. There's also an article today, and many of you may have seen it, that's in the state newspaper. Want to encourage rural growth? Start by trying. And essentially, I think that I hope you saw the article because it's very pertinent right now for Fairfield County and some of the things that we hope to do. The article was written by a guest columnist, Thomas C. Keith, who's from the Sisters of Charities Foundation. And the article compares the thriving cities, their surrounding areas, to the rural areas where little has changed since the loss of manufacturing centers that once brought prosperity. Essentially, we must face the fact that manufacturing jobs lost are not coming back. Our residents need skills for viable industries today. Fairfield United has invited Fairfield Council members to have an open discussion about the issues of jobs, transportation, training, housing, and infrastructure. So together, we can explore solutions for Fairfield County. As long as you're content to look out at us comfortably and just see us attending your meetings and waiting for the next meeting or the next election, we will not explore solutions for our challenges. We must work together. A dialogue requires talking and listening. It's a two-way conversation. We can't do the same thing we have always done and expect different results. If we fail to plan, we plan to fail. Join Fairfield United on June 19th at 6 at St. John's AME Church to share your vision for Fairfield County. Maybe your vision is similar to our vision. Maybe we can find common ground on issues of importance to many residents of Fairfield County.
Thank you, Ms. Green.
Next, Mr. Moses Bell, Water Study in Ridgeway area.
Thank you, Council. Moses Bell, District 1. I'm requesting a water study in the Ridgeway Longtown area for those persons who have well water. It is believed that the gold mine reduced the water table, thereby causing most area residents to have very, very muddy water, especially those with old wells. And there's also a lot of iron in the water. It also seems that there's a lot of cancer in that area. Just about, when you look at, especially if you look at our church, various churches, a lot of people coming up with cancer. We know that the gold mine did a lot of things over there. Don't know what that was all about. But anyway, I would be glad to discuss with you at a later date if you all need it. But again, this water study is very needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Jeff Schaefer on life saving.
It's county property. Before you start that clock, we need to turn this thing around. But I'm going to stand sideways. Please forgive me for being excessively blunt tonight. Since I only have 3 minutes, I'm going to use them to emphasize the problem. This county does not provide quality and necessary life-saving services. I'm talking about the police, fire department, EMS, first responders. You know we have this problem, everyone does, and yet it appears the responsibility to fix it is and has been non-existent. I'm asking tonight for this council to take full responsibility for a solution, which will require a majority vote and a stroke of the pen. If it's not going to happen, let's all go home and pack up, because we're not safe here now. The facts are, after calling 911 Sunday night, Memorial Day weekend, it took more than 20 minutes for the police to arrive at my home, and then more than 30 minutes for the fire department. I'm not going to take any time discussing the fiasco of just calling 911. That will take an hour. The photos I had more, but this one, showing you the beginning of that stolen car upside down, exploding in flames, and I had another one ending with the blue lights and the car and the ashes and the hood melted into my driveway and the woods on fire. Those photos are worth 1,000 words. I don't have time to express that in 2 minutes. What's the purpose of having life-saving service departments if they can't save lives or property? It's a simple question. I don't pay my taxes for excuses. There should be none. We have the money. We have the necessity. The question is, how long are we going to wait for you to act on this? I appeal to your common sense to hear what I'm saying so that you'll stop everything else on your agenda. We need you to hire a competent fire department 24/7 and make sure that they are provided great training and financial incentives to keep these people living in the community and happy to be here. You'll pay them a better than average salary to the police who put their life on the line, a salary you would want if you had the courage to do what they do, and reward them with a bonus or time incentives to keep them here. Talk is cheap. It does not save lives. Every councilman has their history, and that history is why they're no longer here. Don't make that same mistake. Keep your campaign promises and make this your priority tonight and report back to us next meeting. Hold a special meeting if necessary to the general public. We want this problem solved with quality people because it appears to me we are currently overstocked with warm bodies and empty brain cells. I don't want this to be a finger-pointing contest. The responsibility of hiring or firing funds starts and stops with you 7 and this administration. Lastly, we have a huge drug problem in Dawkins. Had one forever. We want it stopped. We want a police substation in that neighborhood. If it's the only way to get rid of them, and I'll thank you when this job is done. Thank you. Gee, I had seconds left. I could have filled it in.
Next, Mr. John James on local issue.
Thank you, ma'am. And it's Jones.
And Ms. Goins, if I don't represent the district properly, just throw something at me, please. This is something that's been bothering me since we've lived there. And you don't want to jump up in front of people and think you're the only one, because, you know, a voice of one kind of feels really, really alone. So with Jeff's impromptu weenie roast, I figured I'd go ahead and jump into this thing. My wife and I built a house in the Blair Dawkins community, and we love the tranquility of living in the countryside by the lake. Having your own home versus living in a military housing is different in that everything you need has to be done by you, or you have to hire someone. You are now your own housing authority for all your needs except emergency services. If a tree gets blown over by a storm, you have to sharpen your axe or oil up your chainsaw and get to work. If your chainsaw bucks back at you and gets you, hopefully you aren't alone. You call 911 dispatch. If you're clearing brush and a copperhead bites you instead of a black racer, you call 911 dispatch. If you're sleeping and you hear an intruder, you call 911 dispatch. If you wake up to fire alarms going off, again, you call 911 dispatch. And if you do call and the person on the other end does not have a clear speaking voice, or they come back at you in a lazy mushmouth voice, or they just don't seem to care about your situation, then your day will become less than optimum. We cannot all speak like James Earl Jones or speak with a Harvard accent, but we should all care whether or not our fellow man is in distress. Having a trained, verbally articulate 911 dispatcher is the first rung in the emergency response ladder and sets the tone for the responders that follow. In closing, my concerns are trained, articulate 911 dispatchers, more timely medical emergency response, and increased visibility of law enforcement during non-emergent times. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Randy Bright on News You Can Use.
Randy Bright, Ridgeway, District 1. Several articles caught my attention that bring home many things, and I'll at least get to a couple of them. These are recent articles in the state. And I've brought this one subject up before. This is Economic Development 101, that most of the rest of the state is utilizing to the great advantage. And the headline in this front page article says in the state from a couple weeks ago, Midland's senior living market heats up. People want to come to South Carolina. People want to come to the Midlands to retire. 55 and older communities and developments are in extreme demand and will be for a long, long time. And as we've mentioned before, there's been many studies on these developments. One shows that they have a greater impact than a large manufacturing facility. Two, they require little investment on the municipality or the county government because there's no kids involved and most of the streets and infrastructure is within the housing development that is provided. So low cost, high return, both from the initial construction phase, and if you want to start filling up the downtown business areas, we need population to do it. We need population to bring small business owners a reason to think that they can make a go of it in our downtown area. And the other nice part about these 55 and older communities is that they raise our tax base considerably. The average house would be much greater than our typical average house right now value. So we get greater taxes, we spend less money, and we improve our economy with very little effort. The rest of the state and most of the South is onto this, and we have just the perfect location. We're close to actually two major metro markets. We have abundance of water, abundance of room, abundance of friendly people, abundance of everything. Except we haven't been able to have the inertia to get our fair share of the Midlands senior living market that's heating up. The other quick article I had, Ms. Green already commented. I sent Dan and Billy example of what other communities are doing to raise their standard of living, and there's a lot of universal threads in there that we could easily leverage. Please look at it, Dan and Billy, please share it with the rest of the council. There are small rural communities, smaller than us, that are making big inroads into economic development and making a name for themselves, for people to live there, for people to stay there, and people to visit there. Thank you.
That concludes segment 2.
All right, we're now down to county council time. Any council member would like to be recognized? Mr. Douglas.
Mr. Bell and Mr. Bright, two of the most important issues facing the future in Fairfield County is supplying water and sewer to everyone. Having the services in place for industry is needed for the use. I have a plan to help the sewage and water problems we're having, but I'll talk about it next meeting. Another issue, people have been misinformed about Fairfield Memorial Hospital. I'm on the hospital board, and I can assure you nothing has been mentioned about closing the hospital. Providence Hospital is going to build a freestanding emergency room and relieve Fairfield Memorial of its most expensive part of their services. When the emergency room is finished, Providence is offered to lease X-ray, MRI, and CT scan equipment to help the hospital survive and prosper.
Anyone else? Ms. Goins.
If I may, please. In front of you, you have a package that from Goodwill. And to kind of limit the time, I usually just speak out, but I'm going to read this and give you a little bit of background about that. Ms. Gwen Johnson from Goodwill contacted me about mid-May 2017, and we scheduled an appointment to meet with Mr. Michael Adams, Vice President of Business and Development with Goodwill, and Mrs. Satonia Bryant, Employment Specialist. She maximizes employment opportunities if you're willing. We met at their mega site on Farrell Road on June 1st of this month. They would like to work in collaboration with Fairfield County and its agencies to help extend and create employment opportunities and a better quality of life for persons that want a hand up and not a hand out. They have an awesome training and prep program. We did the tour from drop-off to floor sales. I met with persons that have had real life-changing experiences through their program. One gentleman is now a distribution supervisor at that store and a public spokesperson for Goodwill. Another young lady is now part-time employed training in office assistance with the possibility of full-time employment. The benefits are just awesome and fantastic if one is willing to stay focused, commit, sacrifice, and work hard. Also, I learned donations that are not used here in the United States are sent to other countries. Mrs. Antonia Bryant gave me a detailed show-and-tell explanation of the process from application to training in many different areas of the workforce and other life matters. Prep from temporary, part-time, mock interviews to full-time employment. And the 55 and over employment program is a wonderful thing. I did a little research with one of the Richland County School District's employment sources and confirmed they use referrals from Goodwill all the time and have hired many persons. Goodwill has a good track record for service in communities. We discussed the possibility of placing a store in Fairfield County, hopefully by the time school opens this fall, 2017. This could benefit many families in our community and take a lot of pressure off the concern for monies back to school shopping. I mentioned this to our deputy administrator and gave Mr. Adams the deputy administrators and our administrators' contact information. Shortly after I had written this up, Mr. Adams sent me an email. He's already reached out to our deputy administrator to come into the county on this week and do a tour of possible sites, properties, or buildings for use. I place strong emphasis on we and the fact that we are a council team that includes administrative staff and clerk to council, all agencies and citizens. We're in this together. We are Fairfield County. I will be working closely with their team to move this project forward, but we will need much prayer and the help and support of all our team members to make it happen. And I'm asking from council, from Chairman Smith and the council team, to permit Mr. Adams and members of his team to be placed on the agenda on June 26th for approximately 30 minutes to do a presentation of the benefits and opportunities that they have. And I spoke with him on today, and the date is confirmed with him if it is acceptable with the council team. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Goins. Anyone else? Mr. Roof?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. A couple of things. Recreation was mentioned, and most of y'all probably already know it's very much needed everywhere, and it's been approved for District 1, and meetings have been taking place, and hopefully, and we're moving forward with that. So hopefully in the near future, we'll have something going there. And also, it's about going back to the mega site recreation. I'm sure, Mr. Taylor, you'll keep us up to date on the bids and all the details of that before we move forward. Okay, thank you, sir. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Chair, I just want to touch on maybe a couple things. For one, could council possibly put on the agenda as far as an economic report, maybe monthly? I'm sure everything can't go on the report, as far as legalities wise, but as far as prospects, maybe we can get a number, or basically what I'm getting at is to tell the people something. I think it'd be a good idea to let the people know what type of prospects we have, or what are we looking at. Secondly, to address the two gentlemen in reference to law enforcement, I'm just curious if, I'm not a spokesperson for the sheriff's department, but maybe you need to go speak with the sheriff and find out what were the circumstances for them getting there for 20 minutes. Coming from law enforcement is a number of things that could prohibit you from getting there at the snap of a finger. Many citizens want deputies to be there at the snap of a finger, but we live in a rural community. So therefore, we don't have the manpower to put a substation X, Y, and Z. More deputies? Yes, we definitely need that. I know for sure. But as far as a substation, you have to get with the sheriff in reference to that. I happen to believe and think that we have some of the top-notch sheriff's departments, fire and EMS here. Like I said, just take into consideration some of the circumstances that prevented them from being there in a timely manner. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Paul, did you have something?
Yes. I want to speak on the issue of 911. Recently, we had a house fire in Winsboro where 2 kids got killed. I got many complaints, many phone calls where it took 30 minutes for EMS or fire units to get there. These dispatchers received all kind of negative feedback on Facebook about the way the call was handled. When I did my investigation and asked Deputy Administrator Anderson for the report, somebody was on scene 10 minutes after the call came out. So a lot of times when people think it takes 30 minutes or 40 minutes and you're giving criticism to these dispatchers, they had somebody on the scene 10 minutes from the time the call came out. They did everything they could do to save those kids. And when I hear people come in and talk about better dispatchers or better sheriff's department or better EMS or better fire units, I also was a deputy for 14 years. And I can promise you, we get there as soon as we can. So I just want to ask sometimes for consideration for your fire units and your 911 because they are doing everything they can to save your life and everyone else's life. That's all I got.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts.
Just to touch on one more thing, Mr. Taylor, if it's possible, could you, maybe, I don't know if you could do it today or sometime later in the future, give the, how dispatch operates? If you wouldn't mind explaining that in the near future or today if possible.
I'll have Ms. Phyllis Watkins. Let us schedule her to come in and give a full presentation on how dispatch works. And I will add, we have improved dispatch over the last year. We've added 2 new firemen with an upcoming budget, and we've increased the salaries of our 911 or our EMT, emergency medical people, to make sure that we have competent staff and can attract competent staff. So we have acted to improve all of these services. And we will be applying for SAFER grants, hopefully in the near future, to add even more firemen.
All right. Anybody else? Anything else? Mr. Roof.
What he was talking about our EMS, our deputies, et cetera, we were behind in funding them, and we were losing the officers and EMT people because of that, and so I think that's helped, and so things should hopefully improve greatly as we move forward. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't mean to beat a dead horse. We've had 2 or 3 people talk about this, but I guess it accumulates over time. You hear these complaints, and they kind of reach a crescendo, I guess, at a certain point, and I'll tell you, since I first got on council, I've had numerous complaints about response times and different things of that nature, and I know that we could. I mean, you can always improve. There's always room for improvement, but I will say every specific account that I've been given, and I think anybody in this audience that's ever called me knows that I take phone calls. If I miss it, I call right back. I'm as open, I think, as I can possibly be as a council member, and I always listen to those phone calls and spend probably a lot more time on the phone with some people sometimes than I should, but I do that because I think that's what's necessary of being a good elected official who pays attention to the people who put you in these positions because we're here for them. But I will say that I also believe in standing behind my people, and you know, I consider county employees, me being on council and chair of council and the rest of the council team up here, I think we all look at county employees as our people, and I believe in standing behind them. And I'll say that not a single complaint I've gotten on response times has been accurate. Never. You've got to know that when you make those complaints, these are things that are heavily, by law, audited, tracked. We have the records on that, so when I get a call saying it took 30 minutes for somebody to get there, and I look at the record that's based off of a GPS that you can't toy with, you can't fake that it shows 15 minutes, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do there. We do live in a rural county, and we do have a lot of challenges that you may not have if you live in Columbia or Greenville or Charleston or somewhere of that nature, and we have to contend with those and I think do our best we can in responding to them. But I'll just echo and say that I think over the past couple years and now with this council, we have, again, increased salaries. We've added positions. I think currently our sheriff's department, and wave your hand, correct me if I'm wrong in the back, Sheriff, for most counties our size, we do have more deputies than most counties our size. So just take those things into consideration when you think about this stuff. And I would just say, before you come and publicly chide someone on something, make sure that information is accurate. And I'll be the first one. I'll be glad if you call me to get back with you and let you know whether what you've heard is right or wrong. I've done that in the past. And if I find out that somebody on our team or our people are not doing the right thing, I'll be the first one to hold them to account also. Thank you. Anything else? Sorry. No, sir. We're now down to executive session. I'd like to announce that subsequent to executive session, council may take action on matters discussed in executive session. We only have one item tonight. This will only be council in the room. It's a personnel matter regarding the county administrator and clerk to council. Do we have a motion? It's been moved and properly seconded to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter regarding the county administrator and clerk to council. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? We're now in executive session. Thank you.